Good evening. This is what we call a cold opening. No lead in or anything like that. And the reason that we're doing this is because we want to give a warning this evening. This evening, if you're used to having young children or sensitive people watching the show tonight, might be the night that you decide that that's probably not the best idea. We are going to be going through some horrendous information because this information is not getting to people in the United States. We want the story to get out there. We want you to understand what's going on. We want you to know what the facts are. And we want you to be prepared to fight the lies. So again, before we go into our lead-in, this is a warning. If you have young people or very sensitive about certain subjects of war, then this is not going to be the show that you're going to want to watch. So with that, we will start the show. Erev Tov, everyone. It is Monday night on the fifth day of the month of December, in the 60th day in the war with Hamas in Eretz Israel. Again, just make this very quick. At the beginning, we did a cold opening. We wanted to warn everyone that if you have young children or young people watching, or you're very sensitive to subjects of war, this is not going to be the show that you're going to want to watch. So let us get on with it. We're going to try to have Rabbi Ancel on with us tonight. Rabbi Ancel is in Toronto. Unfortunately, he has pneumonia. But he did want to be here with us. We're trying to raise him on the phone. Hopefully, maybe we'll give him another try, and if not, we'll see if he can manage to call in while we're going through this. So, are you there? Oh. Rabbi Ancel, are you there? Okay, well, he must be having some problems with his audio on his end, but we are going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, he said he would chime in if he was going to mainly listen and chime in if he had anything that he wanted to add. So we're going to go ahead. Okay, so we have gone through and we have collected stories. First of all, let me welcome everybody who's in the chat room. Marshall, Regina, Shoshi, Marilyn, good to have you with us. Crystal, Rabbi Craig Wyckoff, Richard, And Simcha, again, if your son is there, you might want to think twice about him being listening to this show. Okay, so with that said, let's get right into. We've gone through and we've collected these stories from different sources, and they are verified. So this first one, we got this. This came from Newsmax. Of course, it has been on all of the networks today. Talking about actually since Tuesday. This actually happened on Monday, where the Israel's permanent mission to the United Nations held a powerful session at the UN headquarters in New York on Monday, exposing the horrors of sexual violence committed by Hamas terrorists against Israeli women. The event took place after 8 weeks of war, in which the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, has been urging UN bodies and the international community to condemn Hamas for these atrocities and acknowledge them. Sadly, he said, the very international bodies that are supposedly the defenders of all women showed that when it comes to Israelis, indifference is acceptable. To these organizations, Israeli women are not women. The rape of Israelis is not an act of rape. Their silence has been deafening. This is a direct quote from his speech. It was only in the days leading up to the events of the UN Women and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres have explicitly addressed the issue, suggesting it should be investigated. There are numerous accounts of sexual violence during the abhorrent acts of terror of Hamas on October 2nd. That must be vigorously investigated and prosecuted. Gender-based violence must be condemned anytime, anywhere. So Gutierrez, again, 60 days afterwards. Erdan lambasted his response, saying, 2 months after the massacre and the rapes, the UN remembered its purpose to investigate, and by an anti-Semitic body, the only investigation that should take place is into the shocking silence and indifference of the UN Women, which is an organization, in the face of rape and crimes of sexual violence committed against Israeli women. The session, titled Hear Our Voices, was hosted by Tal Heinrich, newly appointed spokeswoman to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and former All Israel News senior correspondent. In her opening remarks, she stated that more than 300 women were slaughtered by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. Some of these women, this is a quote now, some of these women were murdered twice, said Heinrich. The first time when bloodthirsty Hamas terrorists committed shocking acts of sexual violence against them. The second time these women were murdered was when terrorists put a bullet in them. In at least one case, it happened simultaneously. We will not allow for a third time to take place. Through denial and neglect, a refusal to acknowledge the grief and grieve them. Today, we will scream their story, for there cannot be silence in the face of such atrocities, she added. About 700 ambassadors and diplomats, representatives of UN agencies, Jewish organizations, and civil society organizations attended the event. They heard testimonies from women's rights experts and first responders who handled the bodies. Simcha Greineman, a volunteer in Zaka, A governmental rescue and recovery organization described in a shaking voice the conditions in which she found some of the bodies when he entered the houses of Israeli southern communities. He said, one murdered woman had nails and different objects in her female organs. Another body was brutalized to the extent Greineman said, and his team could not identify if it was a man or a woman. Shari Mendez, a member of the IDF Reserve Unit in charge of identifying and preparing the bodies of deceased female soldiers for burial, testified she saw systematic genitalia mutilation. She described some of the bodies with broken pelvises, cut off breasts or legs. Shooting was targeted at sexual organs. We saw that a lot. Reaffirmed one female Israeli police officer in a video testimony that was played at the event. That testimony was actually given to the Knesset last week. The women we received were civilian. We mainly saw either breast amputations or gunshots just to the breast, simply shooting from one side of the breast to the other, another female officer described. As for men, they were also shot in their genitalia, she added. Yael Reinhardt, chief superintendent with the Israeli National Police, provided a similar description. Everything was an apocalypse of corpses. Girls without any clothes on, without tops, without underwear. People cut in half, butchered. Some were beheaded. One shocking piece of evidence was provided by a female survivor of the Nova Music Festival where 364 Israelis were killed. There was a situation where they laid a woman down, and I understand that he was raping her. I remember how he shifted her position, then passed her to another person. The survivor recalled in the video testimony. She was alive. She was standing. She was bleeding from her back. She had long hair, and he was pulling it. She wasn't dressed. He cut off her breast. He threw it on the road, and they played with it. These are animals, people. These are not human beings. They are not even animals. Animals don't even do this kind of stuff. Former Facebook CEO Sheryl Sandberg also addressed the UN session. In her speech, she emphasized that rape should never be used as an act of war. Sandberg added that silence is complicity in the face of such atrocities. It threatens to undo decades of progress and undo an entire movement. The world has to decide who to believe. Who do we believe? The Hamas spokesman, or do we believe the women? She asked. Sandberg, an advocate for women's and girls' rights, invited Senator Kristen Gillibrand, Democrat of New York, to the podium. The senator said that she choked when she saw the list of women's rights organizations who have said nothing about the Hamas vile acts against women. Where is the solidarity for women in this country and in the world to stand up for our mothers, our sisters, our daughters? Gillibrand asked. In recent weeks, many Israelis called out the striking difference between the staunch advocacy for women's rights across the globe and how Israeli female victims of sexual violence were left out of the same conversation. On social media, the hashtag #MeToo, unless you're a Jew, became viral. This hypocrisy was highlighted in a remarkable speech delivered by Lenore Aryel. She is a former Israeli model who herself is a victim of rape. My name is Lenore Aryel. I am a rape survivor, she said in the beginning. I was only 18 at the time. It's been 25 years. Since October 7th, I've been hearing the demons in my head. The terrible videos are bringing everything back. I feel their pain, their lives that were taken. I remember the day I spoke up in public about my personal experience 25 years ago. I remember the warm embrace of the international women's organizations. I felt I had support, and someone believed me. That someone listened to me. Did these organizations demand any proof then? Did they question my version? Did they ask to conduct a comprehensive investigation before jumping to conclusions? No. How convenient it was at that time for these organizations to use my name, my fame, to invite me to their conferences that are in a world of their own, to take a photo as a woman who became for them a symbol. How ashamed I feel that I was nothing but an extra in their production. Why? Because today in these conferences, they don't want to present the blood stains on the pants, the desecrated bodies of my sisters. The bloodthirsty Hamas terrorists even documented their war crimes. And still, most women's organizations are silent. The truth will be revealed. We will not forget them, and we will ensure the world will not forget them. We will be the voice taken from them. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton sent a video message for the audience saying, I have grieved with Israeli women who have lost loved ones to terrorist attacks, but refuse to believe that peace is impossible. That figures. The event was held in partnership with the National Council of Jewish Women, the NCJW, and the World Zionist Organization, Shazur, Hadassah, and the Schusterman Foundation. I apologize if I've actually mispronounced anybody's name. And again, these need to be... Okay, so what is going on here? Let's see. Okay, let's get these back here. Okay, so... Rabbi Craig Wyckoff. Yehuda's 39. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I mean, Yehuda, you're welcome to listen as much as you like. Rabbi Wyckoff says, not only ones that remain silent, crickets from the American 100 movement. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so this story we got from Newsmax. The title on it was Hamas Sexual Violence Against Israeli Women Revealed at UN. So I want to make sure that we get all our references in here so anybody cannot say that we're making this stuff up. Okay, so let me kind of flick through here and see which one I want to hit yet. Okay, so that's pretty much the same thing that another story about the silence, which is absolutely outrageous, the silence of the of worldwide of governments and of especially women's rights organizations, not to say anything. And I mean, 2 months after the fact, not to have anything said. So let's talk a little bit about what was going on with the hostages. Okay, again, this is not the most pleasant stuff in the world to hear, but I want you to hear it. I want you to know it. This one comes from the Jerusalem Post. Woman held hostage by Hamas in Gaza, kept in cages. Okay, this is by Joni Margulis. And again, I apologize if I mispronounce that. Israeli hostages released by Hamas speak out about the state of their captivity in Gaza. So, women who were abducted from Israeli territories and held hostage by Hamas in Gaza were kept in cages, according to a report by Israeli media, citing a statement from a member of the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. The claim is not the first of its kind. In the days immediately following the October 7th attacks, videos from Hamas's Telegraph channel showed child hostages being kept in cages for the majority of their time in captivity. Children. Let me adjust the size of that text so I can actually read it a little better. Hamas distributed a letter on Monday, allegedly written by Danielle Aloni, who was kidnapped alongside her 5-year-old daughter, Emilia, and held in captivity. In the letter, written in Hebrew and translated into Arabic, she reportedly thanked Hamas for extraordinary humanity provided to her daughter, who felt like a queen. Okay, so I'm going to remind you exactly what happened to our prisoners of war in Vietnam, how they were forced to make the same kinds of statements. Oh, we're being treated very well. Our captives are treating us well. We're being treated humanely, and a U.S. out of Vietnam, and that horse hockey. The letter also read, I will forever be a prisoner of love because Emilia did not leave here with psychological trauma forever. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. The Aloni family has not confirmed this letter nor the statements made in it, although it has been widely distributed on social media by Hamas, a terror organization. This letter is one of many that hostages were forced to write, according to Israeli media reports. Hamas shared pictures of Israeli hostages' letters thanking them for their good treatment. So Hamas's plan was to kill the largest number of children, women, and elderly, then kidnap as many innocents as possible, and finally treat them as well to present a positive image. Survivors reported that they are being provided with limited food while being held hostages, without clear reports of physical abuse or torture. Of the small rations they received, sometimes only rice and pita at best. The hostages were often left to cook the food for themselves and for the children held with them. They also said how their final 2 weeks had seen supplies running low. Okay, so yeah. I mean, isn't that what pretty much what every terrorist organization does with their hostages? They're being treated well. You either say that, write this letter at gunpoint, and then we'll release it to everyone. Okay, so what about the innocent Palestinians? Let's talk a little bit about all these supposed innocent Palestinians. The ones who, every time a Jew gets killed, that they are out into the street singing and dancing and passing out candy to everyone. Yeah, let's talk about the innocent Palestinians here for a moment. This one, again, comes from the Jerusalem Post. And this one is titled, Released Hostage Says He Was Held by a UN RWA Teacher in Gaza. This is by the Jerusalem Post staff. Boker's report also cited another hostage saying that he was held by a Gazan doctor as he was treating children patients. One of the hostages released from Gaza revealed that he was held for nearly 50 days in an attic by a teacher from the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East. Now, if you've been watching the IDF's post or the Friends of the IDF posts, you may have seen where they found the tactical vest of one of the Hamas with his ID and with his UNRWA ID also. The story was publicized on X by Channel 13, X, formerly Twitter, Channel 13, Almog Boker. The hostage also said that the teacher who held him captive was the father of 10 children. He was barely provided food or medical attention and was locked away by the teacher, he said. Furthermore, Boker report also cites another hostage, saying that he was held hostage by a Gazan doctor as he was treating children patients. So the UNRW, the UNRW school in Nablus, a report from the beginning of the month saw an UNRWA-run school in Nablus posting a video to its official Facebook page in which young students called for the victory of Hamas, jihad warriors in Gaza. And these were little kids. Little kids. The report documented several examples of teachers at UNRWA schools in Gaza praising the attacks on social media and found ties between Hamas terrorists and the agency's schools. The report revealed that more than 100 Hamas terrorists were confirmed to have graduated from UNRWA schools. Okay, now let's get back to this this situation by the this letter, this supposed letter that was freely written by this woman about how well her daughter was treated. This again comes from the Jerusalem Post. Hostages given tranquilizers. That is actually a war crime. Drugging prisoners is a war crime. Hostages given tranquilizers to look happy upon release from captivity. Of course, having somebody shoving a gun in your face and telling you, smile, will also do that too. Relatives of abductees asked, why isn't the official report issued on the health condition of abductees? Before the release, I'm sorry, I have to keep moving these sizes up so I can read them. Those of you who wear glasses are very familiar with what I'm saying here. Before the release of Israeli captives by Hamas, terrorists forced them to swallow tranquilizers like Clonex, Clozapam, and vitamins so they would look happy, said Professor Ronit Endevelt, head of the Health Ministry's Nutrition Department, at a session of the Knesset Health Committee on Tuesday. Now, they've already reported last week that every one of the hostages that has been released has been suffering with scabies and malnutrition. The one woman who was released had been shot during the kidnapping and had no medical attention until she arrived back in Eretz Israel with a bullet wound and a bullet in her ankle. So anyway, sold under the brand names of Revolot. I should mention who wrote the article. Again, this is written by Judy Siegel Itzkovich. Okay, credit where credit is due. Okay. So sold under the name and so on and so forth. The tranquilizer is given to treat bipolar, mania, agitation, anxiety, seizures, and other conditions. So I guess you would call that a psychotropic. And again,
Yes.
drugging prisoners is a war crime. It relaxes skeletal muscles and works as an anticonvulsant and sedative. Effects begin 60 minutes and last between 6 and 12 hours. The committee chairman, Minister of Knesset Yoni Mashiriki, said that, and again, I apologize if I mispronounced that, said that the ministry must publish data and a detailed report to health organizations around the world describing the medical findings discovered about the hostages after their return, taking into account the limitations arising from the needs of the investigation and privacy. Dr. Hagar Mizrahi, head of the ministry's medical division, told the committee that preliminary medical information was collected before the return of the abductees, and conversations were also held with the returnees after they came back to Israel that could be of use in helping those who return in the future. So it goes on into another article that the separate private compounds were prepared for, well, this is relatives call for global action and reports to international health organizations. Separate private compounds were prepared at Sheba, Soroka, Shander, Wolfson, Tel Aviv, Soransky, and Shamir Medical Centers that radiated a warm and homely atmosphere to those returning from captivity while providing physical and mental support. I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of these returnees afterwards, after they've been reunited with their families, and even some of them when they were united with their families. There was a smile on their face, but you could see it in their eyes. There was something there. There was something that was missing. These people are going to be tortured by this for the rest of their lives. The horrors that they saw and that they were exposed to. We talk about the children. The little children that were forced at gunpoint to watch these horrendous videos of Hamas massacring their parents, friends, family, the dismemberment of women, the rapes and everything else, being forced to watch that for hours on end.
Am I on?
Hello?
Am I on?
You are on.
You know what? What happened. I didn't say anything because I was in the washroom being sick, just for what you were reading, and I usually don't get sick, but I've heard horror stories from my mother being in Auschwitz for 4 years. This, not even what Mengele did. This, you think the world cares? Do you think the United Nations or anybody, health organization, they care about us Jews? Never.
And for those of you, hang on. For those of you who are watching, that is Rabbi Ancel. You may not be able to tell because his voice is extremely different right now because he obviously he is not feeling well. So anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know that was actually you.
Yeah, it's me. But these children, I mean, talk about PTSD. These women that have been raped, their life is gone. There's nothing left in them.
Yeah.
What's there to live for? and they want us to quit fighting. United States wants us to quit fighting. France, the world, the students in universities, they want us to quit. We quit, we die.
That's exactly it. We are in a fight for our lives, and quit is not
I'm not
in the
afraid for
equation.
Israel because Israel is the number 3 nuclear power in the world. This is why Iran doesn't want to get involved. Iran just supports Hezbollah. He says, Hezbollah, you die. We're not going to get involved. Iran already said they don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
Because they know that the next one is going to be a nuclear weapon on Iran. So they keep quiet. They let Hamas, they let Hezbollah do the dirty work. It's not going to work. Israel is not supposed to listen to Biden, to anybody, to Macron, to nobody.
That's right.
Do what you have to do. Hamas wants to use the Gaza people, because I don't call them Palestinian because they're not. They want to use them as shields, let them die. That's it. I may sound cruel, but it's not.
Yeah. So let me go on with this article.
Okay.
But I hope you're feeling better. Everybody in the chat room says Refuah Shlema.
Thank you. I'm just upset. I'm just mad. Forget about being sick. I'm just mad. You know what? These children, these women being raped one after the other. I mean, my mother's horror stories don't sound as bad as this.
Yeah, I
put children, put a baby in a microwave oven.
Yeah.
I mean, that you want to call this human? Nah.
Yeah, walk into a baby nursery with a bunch of kids in there and pick them up and smash their heads against the wall or against the floor. I said, these are not people. People do not do this. Animals don't do this. There is something.
Animals only kill for food.
Yeah. Okay, so the returnees were briefed on how to handle questions from Israeli and foreign journalists. Psychologists and psychiatrists observed that former captives observed that the former trapped captives tried to identify emotional problems caused by their terrible ordeals. No kidding. Yael Gur-Kol, the ministry's chief social worker, added the preparation of what weakness were reportedly suffered by each returned, what required physical and emotional attention, who would break the bad news about murdered relatives, and how to gradually expose them to family and friends. Mental health counselors were provided 24/7 to visit the returnees at home if needed, and clinical dietitians were ready to provide dietary advice. Again, they were all malnutritioned. Scurvy.
Vitamin C.
Yeah, because they weren't allowed to get any sunlight, and they had they weren't getting any vitamin C. Humans and higher order apes, and interesting enough, hamsters cannot make their own vitamin C. All other animals on the planet make their own vitamin C, but humans, higher order apes, and hamsters don't make their own vitamin C. So they have to get it from their diet, and if they're not getting it in their diet, I mean, they develop scurvy fairly quick. So Shir Sagal, whose parents were abducted by terrorists, called on the ministry to declare that the main goal of the government and the IDF must be the return of abductees, emphasizing that my mother will not be able to recover as long as my father is a prisoner. We do not trust you to do your job. My mother's testimony is shocking. And that just jumped for some reason. We'll see how long we remain on the air. Last two times that we tried to cover the war in Israel, we got our feed cut. So I'm every time I see a little flash, I'm checking. I'm checking to see if we're still on. So just in case, if we happen to disappear from YouTube, which is highly probable, if we happen to disappear, we will be going over to Rumble. We will be making that transition fairly soon, but in the meantime, if we just happen to not be here anymore, you'll know, go over to Rumble and look for Maimon Beit Knesset over on Rumble. So anyway, okay, so there's something about the cost of treating these people and so on. It's not really that interesting. So this next thing I want to hit in here, which was, okay, so second day into the war, the International Red Cross was banging on the doors in Israel, demanding to see prisoners. Demanding. Got to see them right now. So far, the International Red Cross has not seen any of the hostages. They didn't even ask to see the hostages until last week. So this story comes to us again from the this one comes from the Jewish press. It is let's see if we have a name on here or if this is from by David Israel. The MDA, or the Magen David Adam CEO Eli Bin, condemns the Red Cross. You are not neutral. Okay, so during the first round of hostage releases, when the Red Cross received the hostages from Hamas, it relayed a message about their health conditions to Magen David Adom. However, during the later rounds, the international organization abandoned this protocol, which was in place. It was agreed to. They abandoned it. They're no better than Hamas. They break their agreements all the time. So is the International Red Cross. The organization abandoned this protocol and refused to convey any messages to its Israeli counterpart. Now remember, the International Red Cross did not recognize Magen David Adom for a very long time. And it wasn't until, I think it was in the 1970s, that they finally recognized the MDA when they had recognized the Red Crescent for decades. So anyway, on September night, News 12 published an angry letter from MDA CEO Eli Bin, who sent Alessandra Menegon, head of the International Red Cross, the International Congress or of the Red Cross, whatever, delegation in Israel. In Bin accused the group, "You are not neutral. If you can't report to the MDA in real time, and in addition, you don't worry about and don't deliver medicine to innocent kidnapped citizens who haven't committed any crime, and if all your concern is for the murderers and the family members of terrorists who carried out attacks in Israel, then your role is completely non-essential," just like the United Nations. Completely non-essential. You did not help in real time a woman who needed medicine and medical care. I think you are far from being a neutral entity. Last week, Bin instructed his staff not to cooperate with the delegations of the International Committee of the Red Cross, with emphasis on Menegon. While giving the MDA the cold shoulder regarding the state of the hostages in Gaza, delegation head Menegon spent a great deal of time advocating for PA Arab terrorists in Israeli prisons. Again, the second day after the attack, the Red Cross was banging on the doors in Israel, demanding to see the prisoners and make sure they were being held and not abused or held in good conditions. And again, like I said, 40 days, 40 days into their captivity, and the Red Cross just finally asked Hamas, and Hamas said, no, we're not, no.
Why are they allowed in Israel?
The International Red Cross? It shouldn't be. I don't think they are going to be allowed in Israel very long. Not after this.
Israel should leave the United Nations.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that's
that's the United Nazi organization. It's not United Nations.
Yeah. Okay, so what's going on outside of Israel? What is the world doing? I mean, where is all the support for Israel out in the world? So we have here from Arutz Sheva a story, an investigation in Britain. London bus drivers fails to stop for Jewish children. Police in London investigating claims Jewish children were prevented from getting on buses in the city. Okay, so the police in London are investigating claims Jewish children have been prevented from getting on buses in the city, The Independent reported on Monday. In one incident, several Jewish schoolboys were waiting, while waiting, a school bus in Stamford Hill in London and signaled for it to stop. The driver initially slowed down, but then continued without stopping, the complaint says. It is claimed several passengers were encouraging the driver's alleged actions, making anti-Semitic remarks, and expressing their gratitude for the bus not stopping. The Met Police said the incident is said to have occurred around 8:05 a.m. on November 26. The alleged incident was reported to Shomrim, the Jewish Community Safety Patrol, and to the Metropolitan Police, by a passenger who felt threatened, intimidated, shocked, and scared, as he was the only Jewish person on the bus at the time. He said he was angered by the apparent complicity of the bus driver and other passengers, a Shomrim spokesman said. A similar incident is said to have taken place 3 days later in Ravensdale Road in Hackney around 7:40 p.m. A 13-year-old Jewish girl reportedly her bus initially slowing down for Jewish boys pulling up their hands for it to stop. She claimed that the driver then rapidly accelerated and did not allow them on. At the next stop, a non-Jewish Londoner was permitted to board, suggesting discriminatory behavior by the driver, the complaint claims. The reporter for London, the London Times, the Times of London, said it was taking the reports extremely serious, and added, "We do not tolerate any form of discrimination on our network." Yeah, okay. Scotland Yard spokesman confirmed the officers are investigating the bus incident in Hackney. It is alleged that drivers slowed while approaching bus stops where children were awaiting before speeding up without stopping, a spokesman said, according to The Independent. On both occasions, suggested that the children were obviously Jewish because of their appearance. It is alleged that during one incident, the other passengers on the bus made anti-Semitic remarks in support of the driver's actions, added the spokesman. In one incident, a pro-Palestinian Arab activist vandalized a kosher restaurant in London. In another, pro-Palestinian Arab activists targeted Jewish families as they were leaving synagogue on Shabbat in northern London. Okay, so that's England, friends.
It's all over the world.
Yeah. It's I'll be good.
I was coughing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a sick world, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So what about the U.S.? Okay, so
it's even worse.
Big story that's been on just about all the networks, including CNN. And in fact, this actually happened at CNN. It was reported in The Hill, which was on, actually today, reported on The Hill, in The Hill. Today, Jayapal comments about Hamas sexual assaults not intended to minimize rape. Okay, so Representative Pramila Jayapal, Democrat of Washington, is seeking to play cleanup over comments she made invoking Palestinian suffering while answering a question about Hamas use of rape against Israeli women, remarks that were met with widespread criticism within the Democratic caucus. Again, I need to adjust the size of this. There we go. Okay. So, Jayapal, a chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, reiterated that she unequivocally condemns the terrorist organization's violent sexual tactics against women, calling them horrific for the second time. Okay, now this is after the fact. Okay, you know she's trying to she's trying to walk it back now. On Tuesday, the Washington Congresswoman, who has faced intense blowback from fellow progressives and moderates for 2 days, sought to clarify remarks she made on CNN's Dinah Bash over the weekend, where she advocated for a balanced approach in addressing the plight of the Palestinians when asked about Hamas's use of sexual assault as a tool of war. My comment about balance was not about rape and not intended to minimize rape and sexual assault in any way. It was about if you haven't seen the interview, go watch the interview and you can tell just how much BS what she's saying now is. It was about recognizing the tremendous pain and trauma of so many Israelis, Palestinians, and other diaspora communities in this terrible war. She wrote as a statement released in the afternoon after she had already had hoof and mouth disease. The Progressive Caucus chair then suggested that those who oppose her policy agenda have misinterpreted her remark. Oh, misinterpreted.
You know why? Because the midterms are coming up.
Yeah. I understand that I have critics who disagree with me on policy, but for them to insinuate that I would think to say or act in a way that equivates, whatever, makes the same on rape as outrageous and completely you have to watch the interview. You have to watch the interview because when the interviewer, Dana Bash, was talking to her and kept trying to get her back on subject, back on point, she kept veering the whole conversation to the Palestinians. You know, oh, it's all about the Palestinians, all about the Palestinians. Well, what about the Israeli? Well, yeah, but the Palestinians this and Palestinians that. I mean, you have to watch it. It was absolutely disgusting, and it's no wonder that her own people, the progressives and the Democrats, are saying, you know, this was outrageous. It was absolutely outrageous. It's just. My goodness. Okay, so what else we got going on in the U.S.? Okay, so announcing today, the U.S. announces visa ban. Now, it's not bad enough that Israel is fighting for her life. She's been being attacked by Hamas. She's being attacked by Hezbollah. She's being attacked by the Houthi. Now we have the U.S. announces a visa ban on extremist settlers. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, this comes again from Arutz Sheva, announced sanctions against Jews accused of attacking Arabs in Judea and Samaria. Now, what they mean by attacking Jews, that means defending themselves.
And Blinken is a Jew.
Yeah. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken today, my cat is more Jewish than he is.
Exactly.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken today, Tuesday, announced a visa ban on extremist settlers, which you can basically interpret that to mean anything, who are accused, not convicted, accused of attacking Palestinian Arabs in Judea and Salamon, or Samaria. We have underscored to the Israeli government the need to do more to hold accountable the extremist settlers who have committed violent attacks against. Where are these attacks? Can somebody please tell me where these attacks are? I mean, we haven't heard about them. I mean, I'm sure that, if there had been attacks, the BBC and Reuters would have been all over it to vilify Israel for it, but I haven't heard any. Have you heard any?
No. I have a question. What right does the United States have to tell Israel what to do and how to do it?
Well, exactly. I mean, they should do what Shimon Peres did. Tell them to go pack sand.
Oh, boy. What are the old guys?
Yeah.
This wouldn't happen.
We have underscored the Israeli government needs to do more to be accountable for the violent attacks against Palestinians of the West Bank. Really, at a time when Hamas has come in and murdered 1,400 Israelis and kidnapped hundreds more, tortured and murdered, and the most horrendous things. And the only thing the United States Secretary of State could find to do is to vilify Israel and call and say, well, you can't come here because we've determined that you're an extremist.
The best thing that would happen is Israel to reinstate the death penalty.
Yes, yeah, Israel has got to rethink their whole position on the death penalty, the corporal punishment, because I mean the only thing that they're doing is they're giving the terrorists impetus to kidnap Israelis. If you keep these in prison, I mean, especially those that have come in and murdered and gone on stabbing sprees, or come in and shot up places and stuff like that. You keep them in prison. That's only an impetus for them to kidnap somebody to get them back. If they weren't there would be no reason to kidnap.
That's why I somehow part of the blame falls on Israel.
Yes.
And there's going to be a lot of heads going to be rolling, because where was Mossad? Where was Shin Bet? Where was the IDF? Where was the border guards?
Yeah. Speaking of
Egypt
that,
warned them that there's something cooking. They knew something was going. They knew they were building tunnels, and they didn't care.
Yeah, I got this hat tip to Marshall, to Mendel, in the room that he passed this on to me, which I was going to do on the second half, but I got so carried away that I missed the break and everything, which we're just going to skip tonight. So, but okay, so this one is Caroline Glick wrote this. It's in the Jewish News Syndicate. Aharon Havila has got to go now. An intelligence chief who publicly rejected the government's characterization of the war, whose poor professional judgment led to the catastrophe, and who has a history of contemptuous insubordination, simply cannot be trusted. Okay, so this was written by her on November 30th. Again, Marshall, thank you for passing this on, because everybody has been wondering, how did this happen? Israel, that has one of the most sophisticated armies on the face of the planet, how was this allowed to happen? So let's find out. Immediately after Blacklisted Day, the blackest day in Israeli history, a consensus formed that we must wait until after the war to investigate how Hamas was able to invade the country, slaughter over 1,200 innocents, and get away with 240 hostages. There's a lot to recommend this position. Now we're at war. Now is not the time for action. I beg to differ. I think she begs to differ too. Now, commanders have been relieved in time of war. We have seen this. It happened in the Civil War. It happened in World War II. Patton was relieved of command of, I think it was the Third Army during the war. Yeah, and MacArthur was relieved of command in the Korean War. So really, if they're a liability, you get rid of them. So now is not the time for action on not recrimination and trials for failed generals, secretary chiefs, and politicians, good or bad. You go to war with the army and leaders you have. People have jobs to do, and our job is to let them do theirs. While reasonable on its face, there is a problem with delaying a reckoning. At least in some cases, it seems clear that the people whose failure enabled the Hamas attack are not capable of bringing us victory. Case in point, Israeli Defense Forces Intelligence Directorate Chief Major General Aharon Havilah, in the weeks since October 7th, more and more information has come out about why Hamas was able to pull it off. All of the information points to Havilah and his close subordinates. The Field Observers Unit at Nahal's base suffered the greatest losses during the Hamas assault. The unit, comprising female soldiers, is responsible for monitoring the footage from security cameras along the Gaza border around the clock and alerting forces on the ground and the intelligence community of anything suspicious. 17 observers were killed, on October 7th. 7 were taken hostage. One, Naamah Levi, was videoed barefoot, being dragged from a truck of a vehicle by her hair and pushed into the back seat. Her hands were zip-tied behind the back. The seat of her sweatpants were stained with blood. She had blood from her hips all the way down to her feet. If you've actually seen, I know in the American press they actually scrubbed that video so that it didn't look so bad, but it was nothing but blood from her hips all the way down, indicating that she had been violently raped. One observer, Ori Megadish, was rescued by the IDF in early November. Another, Noah Marciano, was filmed in hostage video, first alive and then dead. Her body was recovered by IDF forces. Days after friends were slaughtered, raped, and kidnapped, the 2 surviving members of the unit and number of former members started coming forward to tell their story. And in interviews with Channel 11, 2 women related that in the months before the invasion, they were warning it was in the works. The women saw Hamas terrorists training to take over kibbutzim and IDF bases. They watched terrorists practicing taking hostages and blowing up tanks. They saw terror commanders watching the drills. They saw spies probing the fence for weaknesses. They saw it all and reported it all. Rather than giving them medals, unnamed top-level officials in the intelligence corps ordered them to stop. When they continued reporting, the observers were warned that they would be disciplined and removed from the unit if they kept raising concerns. What in the world is going on? The observers weren't the only ones silenced. Raphael Hayun, a civilian hacker who monitors open intelligence networks, worked for the IDF for years. The IDF provided Hayun with equipment to monitor Hamas's internal communications. In late 2019, Hayun began reporting on Hamas training exercises involving invading Israel, penetrating the security fence at multiple points, taking over communities, committing murder and kidnapping. Over time, the training became more intense and detailed. Hayun alerted the units he was working with about Hamas's activity in real time. 5 months before the assault, his colleagues in the IDF were ordered to seize all his equipment and stop working with him. Around the same time, the IDF's Intelligence Directorate Unit 8200 Signals Intelligence Unit also stopped monitoring Hamas's communications. Hayun said that his military colleagues told him the order to cut him off came from senior leadership, and they had no explanation for the decision. Hayun also told reporters he is convinced that if he had been listening in the weeks before October 7th, the invasion would have been prevented. Hayun and observers weren't the only ones who recognized what Hamas was doing. As Channel 11, 12, and Haaretz all reported, a tactical intelligence NCO and non-commissioned officer, that is, and Hamas expert in Unit 8200 with 20 years of experience began providing detailed reports on Hamas's preparations for the invasion in May 2022. In a series of 3 increasingly detailed and urgent reports over succeeding months, the NCO sent out a granular detail, set out in granular detail how Hamas was preparing a broad invasion of Israel that included the invasion of IDF bases, border towns, and kibbutzim. Her reports included all aspects of the invasion that took place on October 7th, including Hamas's use of paragliders, pickup trucks, and motorcycles. She detailed Hamas's plans to massacre and kidnap civilians and soldiers. She warned that their intention was to use provocations along the security fence in the weeks leading up to the operation to get the IDF used to breaches so as to lull the commanders into complacency. She even secured Hamas's own training manual for the operation. She was able to get the information in front of Unit 8200's commander and the top official in the Southern Command. They apparently did nothing. Convinced by his subordinates reporting, her commander, an NCO with 30 years experience, canceled a family vacation because he heard Havilah would be visiting their base. He waylaid Havilah, and he and his subordinate presented her reports. Havilah dismissed their warnings and detailed information as hot air. This man should be put in prison for gross dereliction of duty. Hamas, he insists, was just pretending to make an impression on his followers. He did not communicate her report to either the head of the Israeli security agency, Shin Bet, or the IDF chief of the general staff. So there's your answer why Shin Bet didn't do anything. They were kept out of the loop.
He should be executed.
I mean, that's just one step below treason. The
No, that
NCOs
is
weren't
treason.
the only ones who saw what was happening. As Channel 11 reported on Tuesday in May 2023, the Gaza Division's intelligence officer created a slide presentation titled The Walls of Jericho, setting out in detail how Hamas intended to bring down the security fence and invade Israel at up to 60 separate points, invade the division's base, and enter civilian communities to commit mass murder and seize hostages. In the follow-up report from August, the intelligence officer even explained that Hamas's intended to carry out its plan either on Shabbat or on a holiday when only a small cadre of soldiers would be on duty. His work was dismissed as unrealistic and out of line with Hamas's true intentions by senior intelligence officers at Tel Aviv headquarters. Man, there is a lot of people that should go to prison for this. I'm telling you. At 4 a.m. on October 7th, due to warnings of increasing Hamas movement near the border fence, the senior security leadership, including IDF Chief General Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, Shin Bet Director Rosenbar, Southern Command Commander Major General Yaron Finkelman, and Havilah's assistant, Havilah, was apparently asleep, discussed the movements and decided to go back to bed. Bar sent a small team of fighters to the border area, but that's all. The group didn't inform the Gaza Division commander, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Instead, they agreed to speak again at 8 a.m. Hamas invaded at 6:30. Since at least 2022, Havilah and his colleagues in the Intelligence Directorate and the top echelons of the IDF and the Shin Bet were convinced that Hamas was deterred. Hamas, they insisted, both in public statements and intelligent briefings to political leaders, was interested in providing economic prosperity in Gaza. In one speech, Havilah spoke derisively of an unplanned political leader between the lines in the apparent he was referring to Netanyahu, who had questioned his judgment. Excuse me. I get carried away with this. In one of the meetings, I don't want to divulge where, a closed classified meeting, someone, I won't say who, said to me, Intel Chief, your view is as good as mine. I responded, look, I respect very much your position and standing and your leadership, but your narrative isn't as good as my narrative because behind my narrative stand professionals. Yeah. That's what our professionals got us.
Yep.
What Havilah failed to mention was his habit of ignoring everything his professionals told him and not sharing their information with his superiors. All of this would have been bad enough, but it becomes even worse when seen in the framework of the 10-month insurgency the Israeli left waged against the Netanyahu government. The insurgency was led by Havilah's family. His ex-wife and the mother of his children, Shira Margalit, is married to Ilon Shiloah, a senior advertising executive, Margalit, and Shiloah stood behind much of the political unrest that Israel has experienced since last year. Havilah's daughter spoke at anti-government protest. His son's Twitter feed is filled with anti-Netanyahu speech, I guess. Havilah reportedly did not share the mountain of information his professional intelligence corps gathered on Hamas's plans. But he reportedly repeatedly warned Netanyahu that his government's legal reforms were emboldening Israel's enemy and increasing the likelihood of war. In theory, all of this could have been set aside until the end of the war, except Havilah's actions since October 7th, indicating that he is still informed by his false narrative about Hamas. On the eve of the ground invasion, Netanyahu addressed the public. He explained that the war in Israel's second war of independence and that it presents Israel as an existential challenge. In other words, Israel has no choice but to win. Netanyahu defined victory as rescuing the hostages, destroying Hamas as a military and political entity, and preventing it or other terrorist groups from rising in Gaza ever again. 3 days later, in his first public remarks since October 7, Havilah rejected Netanyahu's description of the war as an existential conflict. Speaking to graduates of the Intelligence Corps Officer Training Course, Havilah insisted, "It's a war. We have no choice but a fight. It's an existential war." Should be removed. Should be removed and should be imprisoned.
Do you see a parallel?
To
a parallel that they were trying to get Trump out?
Yeah.
I think this lack of communication was to get
intentional.
Netanyahu out of power.
Yeah. The difference between an existential conflict and a non-existential conflict is self-evident. You must win a war for your state's existence. You can fight to a draw for a lesser conflict. An intelligence chief who publicly rejects the government's characterization of a war whose poor professional judgment led to a catastrophe. I can't even say the word now. Catastrophe.
Catastrophic.
A catastrophe, and who has a history of contemptuous, insubordinate, simply cannot be trusted to act in accordance with the government's directives. Absolutely.
Give him a bullet.
October 7th was not prevented because many people in positions of responsibility failed the people of Israel. In most cases, it is probably reasonable to wait until after the war to part ways with them. Havilah, however, needs to go. I have to agree with her absolutely 100% that, such a massive intelligence failure, intentionally keeping information away from those who absolutely had the power to do something.
A lot of the blame is on Israel.
Not listening. I mean, I'm going to say it again. Kahani was right.
He was always right. He was always right.
Yeah. So we're 60 days into this war. Actually, in Israel, it would be 61. And the number of hostages in Gaza rises to 138.
I don't believe they're alive.
I seriously doubt if the majority of them are alive. I would be very surprised if they were. I mean, we're how many times has Hamas said, "Oh, we have them," but they were killed by Israeli airstrikes.
So that's their way out.
Yeah, and then when we recover the bodies, we find out completely different. Okay, so I want to just get to some of the news coming out of Israel. Our good friend Gadi Edelman. If you haven't If you haven't yet, and you're on Facebook, friend him on Facebook, because he gives usually about 3 every day on what he's doing in Israel. They are moving. They just moved him today. They were going to move them on Wednesday, but I guess that got moved up. So he was up just outside of Tel Aviv. Now he is south of
South.
Ashkelon, and what he's doing is he's running supplies to the troops. Good man, putting himself. I mean, he could have stayed here in the United States, could have done some fundraising, could have stayed safe, but he chose to go and put himself in harm's way.
I could have been there too.
Yeah. But he's doing what he can. And there's a whole group of volunteers there, mainly a lot of older people. My age, Rabbi Ancel's age, that are there, working, packing boxes and making packages up and stuff like that to be transported to our troops in the front lines. In the north and in the south. So, okay, so we are into the third phase, according to the IDF Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, who stated that the IDF is launching its third stage on its ground campaign against Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza with the encirclement of Khan Yunis. Again, this is from Aryel. This was by, let's see, I guess it must have been staff. Okay, 60 days after the war has begun, our forces are now encircling the Khan Yunis area in the southern Gaza Strip, Halevi said. Simultaneously, we continue to secure our accomplishments in the northern Gaza Strip. Those who thought that the IDF would not know how to renew the fighting after the pause were mistaken, and Hamas is already feeling this. Many Hamas operatives, including senior commanders, have been eliminated in recent days. Chief of Staff announced, "We have moved to the third phase of the ground operation. We have secured many Hamas strongholds in the northern Gaza Strip, and now we are operating against its strongholds in the south. We operate professionally, evacuating the population from the combat zone, striking Hamas from above and below ground with combined strikes from air, sea, and land." We are developing our ground forces into combat with powerful and precise support of fire and intelligence with a high level of accuracy. At least they're not depending on Halevi for their reconnaissance. Our forces engage with many terrorist targets. Terrorists target them efficiently and in an impressive manner. With our forces, our ISA representatives are bringing the capabilities of the organization. Our forces are joined by representatives from across the IDF. This partnership really builds strength on the battlefield. Halevi blamed Hamas for the death toll in Gaza. Many ask about the destruction in Gaza. Hamas, in its address, Hamas is the address. Sinwar is the address. Our forces find nearly every building and house weapons, and in many houses terrorists, and engage them in combat. We understand that. I mean, they found weapons under children's cribs, for crying out loud. We understand that part of their method is the weapon left in the houses. A terrorist arrives in civilian clothes and conducts combat from there. Striking them requires significant use of fire, both to target the enemy, but also to, of course, protect our forces. Therefore, the forces operate powerfully while making big efforts to mitigate as much as possible harm to citizens. This must be a direct translation because of the way the phrasing is. The military, because I actually heard him speaking in Hebrew. The military pressure we are applying and have applied in recent weeks is severely damaging Hamas, advancing the advancement of all the war's objectives and the top priority of returning the hostages home. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet commanders in combat in the northern Gaza Strip. I hear them, I talk to them, and they say very clearly, we are ready and willing to do everything to return the hostages, to do everything to strike Hamas and dismantle this organization. And I see their wisdom, and they also know how to turn these two missions into complementary missions and not competing things. And we are truly doing everything to return the hostages. Let me take that up a little bit there. There we go. Now I can read it. Okay. Yesterday, I read that. Addressing the ongoing attacks from Lebanon, Halevi said, Hezbollah chose to open fire at the end of the operational pause. We identified this in advance and prepared for this. We are resolutely acting against anyone preparing or attempting to harm the citizens of Israel, IDF soldiers, or those that pose a threat to our territory. We are exacting a high price from Hezbollah. One that is trying to hide, which they probably understand why. We are focused on Gaza together. With this, we are continuing operational activities amid and at achieving better security reality in the north of Israel, he said. Turning to the security situation in Judea and Samaria, he said, in the Central Command in Judea, Samaria, we are increasing the fight against terrorism. So far, we must say that with great success. In the last 2 months, over 1,200 Hamas operatives were apprehended in Judea and Samaria. Many terrorists who carried out attacks, and of course, the U.S. says that the settlers are the terrorists. Many terrorists who carried out the attacks, some very serious attacks in the past, some that were planning to carry out future attacks. They were arrested or killed, and they are very determined to continue the effort. We also addressed the death of Yuval Salamon, the civilian who stopped the terrorist attack in which 3 people were murdered by Hamas terrorists in Jerusalem last week. But he was shot and killed by security forces who mistook him for an attacker. Friendly fire. It's one of the worst things in the world to hear, right? Killed by friendly fire. A few days ago, we experienced a tragic event in Jerusalem in which the late Yuval Doron Salamon was killed. It is important to me to say we praise the heroism of the civilian who ran bravely into the fire to stop the killing of civilians. This is truly heroic. At the same time, we emphasize the need to stick to the basic and required rules in complex situations like these, shooting in a civilian environment. Do not shoot when the threat is lowered, and we do not shoot at those who put their hands up. This specific case is, of course, still under investigation, and these insights, it is important that we all know this right now, he said. Of course, these kinds of things are going to happen. Unfortunately, Mr. Castleman died in friendly fire. We don't know exactly what the whole thing was because the investigation isn't done now. But it's a very sad thing. Very sad thing when any soldier dies or any civilian dies by friendly fire. Okay, so Rabbi Ancel, are you still there? Are you still with us? I know he was not feeling well at all tonight, so I'm not surprised. If you're listening, I'm going to hang up. You get some rest, and we'll talk to you tomorrow if you're feeling better. So there we go. So we rest Rabbi Ancel Refuah Shlemah. Again, yes, this was a very somber show, but it needs to get out there. Yeah, this information really needs to get out there. You need to know this information so that you can combat all the lies that are going around, even among our government and especially in the legacy media. Hope that we are going to continue bringing you more and more information. We'll do updates every week on this show, the Rabbis Discuss, on what is going on currently with the war, any background that we can give you, facts, all facts, so we're going to conclude our broadcast tonight. Actually, I kind of figured we might actually run over, but so anyway, hope you'll be with us tomorrow for maybe a little more uplifting show for the Rabbis Discuss, which will be Rabbi Aryel, myself, and Rabbi Ancel, if he is feeling up to it. Only if he's feeling up to it. We'll see. That is at 8 p.m. tomorrow. Don't forget, Thursday night, first light. Hanukkah starts at after sundown on Thursday. Hope you all have a wonderful Hanukkah. I mean, it's time for us to have another Hanukkah miracle. Right now would be a good time. Okay, Friday night, 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Mariv Shabbat service. Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shachrit and Musaf service. And then Monday is Zeta's Story Corner. And then right back here again on Tuesday for more of the Rabbis Discuss and more news from Israel, from the front. And more information. Until we see you again, we'll say Laila Tov.